They murdered our president on a live galactic broadcast, and they didn't even try to hide it. They thought we were weak. They thought we were just emotional, primitive little humans who would crumble in fear. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. And if you stick with me for the next few minutes, you'll hear how one woman's last word sparked a revolution that shook the entire galaxy. It all started 60 hours earlier, aboard the starship Harmony. President Margaret Stone, a 52-year-old grandmother with silver hair and eyes that had seen far too much, was staring out at Earth as it shrank into a tiny blue marble behind them. She was on her way to the most important meeting in human history. Her closest friend, Dr. Lisa Carter, teased her. "Nervous, Maggie?" Margaret just smiled and touched a small pin on her jacket, a tiny flag of Earth. "A little," she admitted. "This could change everything for our people." Just then, Commander Jake Martinez, a man built like a brick wall with a personality to match, strode in. "Madam President, we'll hit Kepler Station in 6 hours. Captain Bell has triple-checked all security." For 15 years, Jake had been the shield for Earth's leaders, and if he said they were safe, Margaret believed him. For 30 long years, the Galactic Council had slammed the door in humanity's face. They called us too young, too reckless. But Margaret, with her powerful speeches about unity and peace, had finally gotten them to listen. "Run me through the guest list again," Margaret said, settling in for dinner. Lisa pulled up her data pad. "First, you have the Zephyrians, the big shots. Their leader, Chancellor Vexy, rules over 200 worlds. They're tall, blue, and think they're better than everyone. Then there's the Hegemony, led by Admiral Krell. He's a reptile-looking warrior who prefers conquering to negotiating. He respects strength, which he thinks we don't have." Margaret's brow furrowed. "And the last one?" "The Aetherans," Lisa said. "Their leader is Matriarch Salandra. They play the part of the wise, peaceful ones, but nobody's sure what they're really thinking. They looked almost like ghosts, thin and unnervingly pale." Jake sat down, his expression grim. "Ma'am, I don't like it. For 30 years they ignore us, and now they roll out the red carpet. Something's off." "Maybe," Margaret replied, her voice soft but firm. "But we have to try. A seat on that council means our children get a future out there among the stars." Just then, Captain Ryan Bell, her personal guard, entered. The man was her shadow, a silent protector who'd saved her life 3 times. "Report, Captain," Jake ordered. "All quiet," Ryan said, his eyes scanning every corner. "The alien ships are keeping their distance. No weapons powered." Margaret looked at the 3 people who had become her family: Lisa, the dreamer, Jake, the defender, and Ryan, the guardian. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said, a warmth in her voice, "know that serving with you has been the honor of my life." The next morning, Kepler Station filled their viewports. It was breathtaking, a city-sized structure humming with the energy of 1,000 different worlds. "Wow," Lisa whispered. "Intimidating," Jake grumbled back. As they walked through the station's massive corridors, the air was a strange cocktail of smells from planets Margaret couldn't even name. They entered the Great Hall, a cavernous room with a ceiling that glittered like a captured galaxy. Hundreds of aliens turned to watch the small human delegation walk toward the center of the room. It was the longest walk of Margaret's life. On 3 massive thrones sat the council leaders. Chancellor Vexy, with his glowing blue skin and golden eyes, looked down at them like they were ants. Admiral Krell flashed a grin that was all sharp, pointy teeth. Matriarch Salandra just watched with cold, empty eyes. Vexy's voice echoed through the hall. "So the children of Earth finally come to beg at our table." Margaret felt a flash of anger, but she buried it. "We come as equals, Chancellor, hoping to join the galactic community." Krell let out a grating laugh. "Equals? Your species just learned how to leave its own planet. We have ruled the stars for millennia." "Age does not guarantee wisdom, Admiral," Margaret shot back. "And power without compassion is just brutality." A hush fell over the crowd. Nobody talked to the council leaders like that. Salandra leaned forward, her voice a soft hiss. "You speak of compassion, yet your history is filled with war. Why should we believe you've changed?" "Because we learned," Margaret said simply. "We chose to be better." She took a step forward, and Ryan's hand twitched toward his weapon. "Members of the council," she began, her voice ringing with passion. "I'm not here to ask for a handout. I'm here to offer a partnership." For 20 minutes, she spoke of humanity's art, our science, our unbreakable spirit. She spoke of the children on Earth who dreamed of having friends among the stars. It was the speech of her life. When she finished, the three leaders whispered among themselves. Finally, Vexi stood. "Your words are pleasant, human. Let us drink to your attempt." Servants brought out glasses of shimmering blue liquid. It was a ceremonial wine, a supposed gesture of peace. "To new friendships," Margaret said, raising her glass. As she brought it to her lips, Ryan screamed, "No!" An energy blast slammed into her chest. The glass shattered. As Lisa caught her, Margaret saw Vexi standing over her, a tiny weapon in his hand, a smug look on his face. "A tragic accident," he announced. With her last breath, Margaret gripped Lisa's hand and whispered a secret message only she would understand. "Tell them, Protocol 91, we tried." Then, the greatest leader Earth had ever known was gone. They thought killing her would break us. Instead, they had just signed their own death warrant. The shuttle carrying President Stone's body arrived back on Earth 3 days later. A world watched in silent grief. Billions saw the flag-draped coffin. They saw Lisa's tear-streaked face, Jake's barely controlled fury, and Ryan's crushing guilt. Waiting for them at the bottom of the ramp was Vice President Patricia Hayes. She was 60 years old, a former general with eyes like chips of ice. The law now called her president, but in her heart, she was a soldier preparing for her final war. "Welcome home, Maggie," Patricia whispered as the coffin was carried past her. At the funeral, in front of the world and a smug alien observer, the new president took the stage. Everyone expected tears and a plea for peace. They were about to be surprised. "Margaret Stone died trying to build a bridge to the stars," Patricia began, her voice calm and steady. "She believed the galaxy was ready for peace. She was wrong." The crowd held its breath. But she was right about one thing, the strength of the human spirit. She knew that when we are pushed, we do not fall. We push back. Her voice rose to a roar. "The cowards who murdered our president think this is over. They think we will cry and hide. They are about to get a history lesson, a human history lesson." The roar from the crowd was deafening. That night, President Hayes activated Protocol 91. It wasn't a weapon. It was something far more powerful. The truth. It was a massive data file Margaret had been secretly broadcasting during her entire speech, proof of Vexi and Krell's secret wars, their slave trades, their plans to conquer the lesser races. It also exposed matriarch Salandra as a manipulator who played all sides. The file went out to every minor world, every oppressed species in the galaxy. The revolution wasn't fought with human ships, but with human courage. The Galactic Council crumbled, its tyrants overthrown by their own people, all thanks to a brave woman who was willing to die for the truth. Humanity didn't just get a seat at the new table. We helped build it, and the galaxy learned a valuable lesson: never ever underestimate the children of Earth. The alien observers squirmed in their seats, a feeling they were about to get used to. After the funeral, Patricia, the new president, gathered with Jake, Lisa, and Ryan in a shielded bunker deep beneath the Capitol. But they weren't alone. At the head of the table sat Admiral Kevin Ross, a man so secret he was practically a myth. "Madam President," Admiral Ross began, "it's time you knew what we've really been up to for the last 30 years. A hologram of the solar system bloomed in the air, but instead of the familiar research outposts, it showed colossal weapons platforms lurking in the dark. While President Stone was trying to build bridges," Ross explained, "his division was building cannons. Every handshake, every treaty was a chance to study their technology. Every trade deal was an opportunity to slip into their computer networks. Every cultural exchange was a lesson in their vulnerabilities." Lisa stared, horrified. "You've been spying on them this entire time." "We've been preparing," Ross corrected her. "Did you honestly think we'd trust species that have called us primitives for 3 decades? Did you think we'd leave our world defenseless while we begged for a seat at their table?" Jake leaned in, his eyes glued to the hologram. "So what exactly are we looking at?" Ross allowed himself a grim smile. "The Sol defense grid. 50 weapons platforms, all disguised as research stations. Each one can vaporize an entire battle fleet, and that's just for starters." The image shifted, revealing hidden shipyards carved into asteroids and tucked away on the dark sides of moons. Thousands of ships were being assembled, blending the best of human ingenuity with captured alien science. "How many?" Patricia asked, her voice hushed. 3,000 are battle-ready, 5,000 more are on the assembly line, and they're unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen." Ryan chimed in, skeptical. "They'll spot them the second they leave the hangar." "No, they won't." Ross gestured to a nervous-looking man who stepped out of the shadows. "Dr. Carter, I'd like you to meet Dr. Alex Turner, the head of our stealth program." The thin man swallowed hard. "We cracked the detection problem. Our ships are completely invisible to their sensors. They can't see us coming. They can't track our movements. They won't even know we're there until our missiles hit their hulls." Lisa just shook her head. "This is madness. You're talking about picking a fight with half the galaxy." "They started this war the moment they assassinated our president," Patricia said, her voice like steel. "We're going to finish it." Ross pulled up the latest intelligence. The alien triumvirate was convinced they had broken humanity's spirit. Their fleets were already creeping toward Earth's borders. Chancellor Vexati was boasting about how simple it was to eliminate our leader. Admiral Krell was drawing up plans to invade within 6 months. "Let them come," Patricia declared. "They're about to find out what humans are really made of." Over the next month, Earth geared up for war in absolute secrecy. The alien observers on Earth saw only a grieving, leaderless people. They reported back about the protests and the sorrow, convinced the planet was tearing itself apart. They couldn't have been more wrong. In hidden factories across the globe, assembly lines ran 24/7, churning out weapons. The new stealth ships were armed with missiles designed to tear through alien shields. Soldiers drilled relentlessly for boarding actions and ground assaults. Scientists worked around the clock, turning the aliens' own technology back on them. Lisa found herself at the helm of a research division that had been studying alien weaknesses for decades. "Every species has a fatal flaw," she briefed her team. "The Zephyrians are too arrogant to cooperate. The hegemony is completely dependent on their computer systems. The Athetherans think they're too clever to ever be outsmarted." A captain named Bell was given command of a new Special Forces unit, the Ghost Regiment. These were soldiers trained to fight from the shadows, to strike without warning and vanish before the enemy could even react. "We're not just fighting for revenge," Bell told his soldiers. "We're fighting to make sure no one else ever has to watch their leader get murdered in the middle of a peace talk." Jake was promoted to admiral, tasked with commanding the entire attack fleet. His job was to orchestrate the single largest military operation in human history. He pored over star charts, planning strikes that would cripple their ability to fight. "They killed Margaret because they saw us as weak," he told his officers. "We're going to give them a lesson in what human strength truly is." Meanwhile, President Patricia addressed the United Earth Assembly. The aliens were listening in, expecting a speech of surrender. "Fellow humans," she began, "our president died trying to create a better future. The aliens who took her from us believe they've won. They think we'll scurry back to our homeworld and hide like frightened children." She paused, her eyes locking onto the alien observers in the gallery. "They are about to learn that our greatest strength was never one person. It's our unity. It's our resolve. It is our absolute refusal to ever give up." Her voice dropped, becoming as cold as space itself. Margaret Stone believed in peace, but she also believed in justice. Today, we choose justice. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you awaken a sleeping giant. The assembly exploded into a roar of approval. The observers scrambled to send frantic messages home. Earth wasn't broken. Earth was on the warpath, but by the time the message got through, it was far too late. The ghost ships were already gliding through the void, unseen and unheard. The massive weapons platforms were already locking onto their targets. The soldiers were already on their way. Margaret Stone had died trying to bring peace. In her name, humanity would bring war, and the galaxy would be forever changed. The aliens made one catastrophic mistake. They thought that by cutting off the head, they could kill the beast. Instead, they had just given it fangs. 6 months after the assassination, the rest of the galaxy thought Earth was history. The Alien News Network ran stories showing empty human embassies and abandoned trading outposts. The official narrative was that the humans had retreated to their home system, tails between their legs. In his war room on the Zephyrian capital, Chancellor Vexati admired a map of the sector. Red icons marked his fleets, coiled around Earth's borders like a snake. Soon, he'd give the order. "The humans are shattered," he declared to his generals. "Their pathetic leader is gone, and they have no will to fight. We will take their planet and turn them into servants." Admiral Krell was holding a similar briefing on the bridge of his flagship. The colossal hegemony warship, bristling with cannons, was drifting toward Earth's outer colonies. "Humans are soft," Krell snarled at his officers. "They weep over a single dead female. The moment we attack, they'll surrender without firing a single shot." But they were wrong. About everything. Miles deep in enemy territory, Captain Amy Foster sat in the command chair of the stealth ship Phantom. On the bridge, her crew worked in silence. For 3 months, they had been shadowing the Zephyran fleet, completely undetected. Amy, at 35, was one of the best pilots humanity had. She had personally volunteered for the Ghost Fleet, determined to be the one to land the first blow against Margaret's killers. "Captain," her weapons officer whispered, "we're in position. All ghost ships are green." Amy glanced at her tactical display. 50 human ships had the Zephyran fleet completely surrounded, and the aliens were blissfully unaware. The stealth tech was flawless. "Remember the orders," Amy said, her voice calm and steady. "No survivors, no witnesses. When we're done here, it should look like they were never here at all." At that exact moment, Admiral Jake Martinez stood in the command center buried deep beneath Earth's surface. On the screens around him, the positions of every known alien vessel were tracked in real time. The trap had been set for months. "All ghost fleets report ready," an aide announced. Jake thought of Margaret and the peace she died for. That peace was gone. Now there was only justice. "Execute Operation Phantom Strike," he commanded. The opening move was against the Zephyrin forward base at HFY Prime. It was a fortress, home to 1,000 aliens who believed they were untouchable. Captain Foster's ship simply appeared out of the blackness, its weapons already blazing. The station's shields disintegrated instantly. Dozens more ghost ships materialized, pouring fire onto the base from every conceivable angle. The Zephyrins desperately tried to send a distress call, but powerful jammers cut them off completely. They scrambled to launch fighters, but the ghost ships picked them off before they could even clear the launch tubes. In less than 10 minutes, HFY Prime ceased to exist, not damaged, not conquered, erased. When the light from the explosions faded, there was nothing but empty space. That same scene was repeated all across the galaxy. Zephyrian listening posts, hegemony supply depots, and Athetheran communication hubs just vanished. The alien high command received no warnings, no battle reports, no demands. One minute their assets were there, the next they were gone. In her secret lab deep under the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Lisa Carter watched it all unfold. She and her team had spent months finding backdoors into the aliens' networks. Now, they were walking right through the front door. "We're inside their entire comms network," she told her team. "They can't send a single message without us reading it first." On her main screen, she could see the waves of confusion and panic spreading. Admirals were screaming for reinforcements that would never get the call. Imagine being so arrogant you order your generals to command soldiers who are already gone. That's exactly what the aliens were doing. "They're scrambling, trying to figure out what's happening," her assistant said. A cold smile touched Lisa's lips. Let them guess. The fear of the unknown was now their most powerful weapon. Aboard a captured Zephyrin warship, Captain Ryan Bell and his elite Ghost Regiment squad moved like shadows. They had slipped onto the cruiser at a busy space station, neutralized the crew without a sound, and seized control before anyone even knew they were there. "Bridge is ours," Bell whispered into his comms. "Crew's been handled. Not a single alarm went off." The ship's computers were a goldmine of enemy fleet movements, but it was the personal logs that caught his eye. He opened one from a Zephyrin officer to his son. It read, "The war with the humans will be over before you know it. We're going to take their little world and make them regret ever thinking they belonged on the Galactic Council." Bell deleted the message with a tap. These were the same aliens who celebrated when their leader, Margaret, was assassinated. Now it was time to pay up. Back on Earth, President Patricia Hayes stood before her top commanders. The opening act of their grand plan was a stunning success. The aliens were in disarray, terrified by an enemy they couldn't see. "Our casualties?" she asked. "Zero," Admiral Ross confirmed. "We haven't lost a single soldier or ship. The ghost fleets are exceeding every expectation." "And theirs?" "Approximately 50,000 enemy casualties," Ross replied. 12 of their major bases have been wiped off the map. Their forward fleets are already running back to their home systems." Patricia's expression was grim but satisfied. They wanted to know what happens when you cross a line with humanity. Well, now they were finding out. The alien response was exactly what they'd expected: pure panic. Chancellor Vexi, his blue skin pale with a mix of fury and fear, slammed his fist on the table at an emergency meeting. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Our sensors see nothing. Our fleets are being torn apart by ghosts." Admiral Krell, a hulking reptilian, was just as baffled. "It's impossible. Humans are a primitive species. This kind of technology is beyond them." Only Matriarch Salandri seemed to grasp the terrifying truth. "Perhaps," she said calmly, her pale eyes wide with worry, "we underestimated them." "Underestimated them?" Vexi bellowed. They're insects who just barely figured out space travel. Insects, Salandra countered, who have just dismantled a quarter of our most advanced fleet. The horrifying reality was beginning to dawn on the alien leadership. For 30 years, the humans they had laughed at, the ones who kept pleading for a seat at the table, had been hiding their true power. They hadn't been begging for peace. They had been preparing for war. And now, that war had arrived. Captain Foster's ghost ship materialized near another Zephyran base. This time, the aliens thought they were ready. They had sensors dialed up to detect cloaked ships and every weapon aimed at the empty void. It didn't make a difference. The human ships weren't just invisible, they were smarter. They had spent years studying alien battle tactics and were now using those very strategies against them. The base's defenses blasted away at empty space, while the ghost ships carved them up from completely unexpected angles. Within minutes, another enemy fortress was reduced to rubble. All across the galaxy, the story was the same. Alien armadas that had been moments away from invading Earth were suddenly fighting for their very survival against an enemy they couldn't comprehend. The hunters had officially become the hunted. Admiral Martinez watched the reports flood in. The alien fleets were in full retreat, their commanders terrified of pushing forward. The so-called mighty triumvirate was getting a harsh lesson in human resolve. Phase 1 is complete, he announced to his staff. All enemy forward bases have been neutralized. The ghost fleets are now moving into position for Phase 2. But Phase 2 was going to be different. This wasn't about military targets anymore. This was personal. The humans were going straight for the alien leaders themselves. The very individuals who ordered the hit on Margaret Stone were about to get a taste of real justice. But before that, they were going to feel fear. They were going to learn what it's like to be stalked by an enemy who can appear anywhere, at any time, without a single warning. Margaret Stone had died fighting for peace. Now, in her name, her people would show the galaxy the price for murdering an innocent woman whose only crime was wanting to build a bridge between worlds. The aliens had awakened a sleeping giant in humanity, and that giant was just starting to open its eyes. The triumvirate's retreat quickly turned into an all-out rout as humanity finally played its trump card. What the aliens believed were small, surgical strikes by a few invisible ships was actually a perfectly coordinated campaign to annihilate their entire military. From Earth Central Command, Admiral Jake Martinez watched red icons vanish from the holographic star maps. Each blink represented another alien base that had ceased to exist. His team worked in focused silence, directing the single largest military operation the galaxy had ever seen. "Status report," Jake commanded. "Ghost Fleet Alpha has taken out the Hegemony Supply Depot at Wolf 359, his aide replied. "Ghost Fleet Beta just leveled the Zephyran shipyard at Vega. And Ghost Fleet Gamma is closing in on the Etherin Command Center at Proxima." Jake gave a slight nod. For 8 long months, the alien high command thought they were dealing with a small, angry group of human rebels seeking revenge. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Open a channel to all human fleets," Jake ordered. "It's time we introduced ourselves properly." Across the galaxy, 1,000 ghost ships suddenly dropped their cloaking fields. On the sensor screens of every alien vessel, empty space instantly filled with massive, heavily armed human fleets. In his command center, Chancellor Vexy stared, his blue face draining of all color. "Impossible," he whispered, watching the display. "The humans have 1,000 warships. How did we not know?" His intelligence chief, General Zorak, was visibly trembling. "Sir," he stammered, Our best intelligence said Earth had maybe 50 warships, tops. These numbers, it's like they've been building this fleet in secret for decades. Decades! Vexy roared, the terrible truth crashing down on him. While we were laughing at their peace treaties, they were preparing to wipe us out. But it was even worse than he knew. Every diplomatic team Earth had ever sent was packed with engineers and scientists secretly scanning alien technology. Every trade deal gave humanity access to the materials they needed to build their war machine. Every cultural exchange was a chance to study alien weaknesses. Suddenly, President Patricia Hayes's face appeared on every screen in triumvirate space. Her expression was calm, but her eyes blazed with a fire that could melt steel. "People of the galaxy," she began. "8 months ago, your leaders murdered our president, Margaret Stone, during a peace summit. They laughed while we mourned. They called us weak. They called us primitive." She let the words hang in the air for a moment. "Today, you learn the truth. We are not weak. We are not primitive. And we never, ever forgive the murder of an innocent." As she spoke, the newly revealed human fleets moved to surround the most critical planets in triumvirate space. The aliens' most powerful worlds suddenly found themselves hopelessly outgunned. Captain Amy Foster's fleet approached Dominion Falls, the hegemony's legendary fortress world. The planet was encased in energy shields that could withstand a supernova, its surface bristling with the deadliest weapons known to the galaxy. Admiral Krell himself was on the surface, personally overseeing the defense. "Captain," her weapons officer reported, "their shields are at full power, and they're trying to call for reinforcements." Amy allowed herself a grim smile. "Too bad their reinforcements don't exist anymore. Dr. Carter, how are we looking?" On the main view screen, Dr. Lisa Carter's face appeared, live from her lab back on Earth. Behind her, colossal supercomputers, built from captured and reverse-engineered alien tech, hummed with power. "We're ready, Captain," Lisa said. "Time to show them what happens when you share your toys with people you look down on." Lisa's fingers danced across her console. The computer she designed could speak the native digital language of any alien system. They could hijack enemy weapons and turn them back on their masters. Down on Dominion Falls, Admiral Krell watched in pure horror as his own defense grid began targeting itself. The colossal gun emplacements that were meant to protect his world swiveled inward and unleashed hell on their own shield generators. "What is happening?" Krell shrieked at his technicians. "Sir, we've been locked out. Something has taken control of our entire network." "Impossible. Our security is foolproof." But it wasn't foolproof against an enemy who had spent 30 years finding all its back doors. Lisa's program didn't just hack the alien systems. It turned them into a self-destruct sequence. The planet's impenetrable shield shattered under the friendly fire from its own guns. Captain Foster's fleet cruised into orbit, ready for the final attack, but they never had to fire a single shot. The fortress world surrendered immediately, its defenders too stunned and betrayed by their own technology to even think about fighting back. It was the same story across triumvirate space. On the Etherin research moon of New Atlantis, human hackers unleashed the aliens' own horrifying biological experiments on their creators. And Captain Ryan Bell's ground troops walked onto Zephyrin military bases where the automated defense systems had already taken care of the enemy for them. The locks on the barracks doors snapped shut, trapping the alien soldiers inside. In the command centers, the air thinned as life support systems began to fail. And across their comms network, a human voice demanded surrender where alien orders should have been. "This is impossible," General Zorak stammered to Chancellor Vex. "How can they command our own technology better than we do?" Vex had no answer. The Zephyrian Empire, rulers of the cosmos for 1,000 years, was being humbled by a species they'd written off as infants. Then, President Hayes appeared on every screen across the Zephyrian capital, her message clear and sharp. Chancellor Vex, you have a choice. Surrender now, and we will show your people mercy. Keep fighting, and you will learn the true meaning of human fury. But Vex's pride was a fortress. Surrender to humans? Never, he spat. We are Zephyrians. We do not kneel before lesser beings. So be it, Hayes said, her image vanishing. What followed was later called the Night of Falling Stars. Every single Zephyrian military asset in space just stopped. Their warships went dead in the water, drifting like cosmic ghost ships. Their bustling space stations went dark. Their entire communications grid fell silent. Back on Earth, Dr. Carter had located the master control system for all Zephyrian tech. With just a few lines of code, she had effectively switched off an entire empire's ability to wage war. Incredible, Admiral Martinez whispered, watching the reports flood in. We just won a war without a single civilian casualty. But the humans weren't done yet. They had one final point to make. The three most powerful rulers in the galaxy, Vex, Krell, and Zalandra, all received the same message at the exact same time. President Hayes materialized on their private channels, channels that were supposedly impossible to breach. Leaders of the Triumvirate, she said, her voice calm but cold. You wanted to witness human technology firsthand. You wanted to test our spirit. Your wish has been granted. The view behind her shifted, showing Earth's solar system. But instead of the quaint research outposts the aliens expected, the screen revealed colossal weapons platforms aimed directly at them. This is the Sol defense grid, Hayes explained. 50 weapons platforms, each one capable of turning your largest battleships into stardust. We built them while you were mocking our offers of peace. The screen displayed even more. Hidden shipyards tucked away in asteroid belts, weapon factories humming on distant moons, and training camps for human soldiers who had spent their entire lives preparing for this very conflict. You executed our president because you saw us as weak, Hayes went on. You planned to conquer our home because you saw us as defenseless. You were wrong on every count. Vex, Krell, and Zalandra stared in disbelief as the true scale of humanity's preparations unfolded. While they were dismissing Earth as a backwater planet, the humans had secretly constructed the most advanced military in the galaxy. You have 48 hours to surrender without conditions, Hayes declared. After that, our mercy runs out. The transmission cut, leaving the three alien leaders in a state of shock. In under a year, humanity had gone from pleading for a seat at the table to kicking the table over and dictating the terms. Margaret Stone's dream of peace was gone, but her people had forged something far more potent in its place: fear. And that fear was now blazing across the galaxy. The 48-hour deadline came and went with nothing but silence from the triumvirate leaders. Chancellor Vex, Admiral Krell, and Matriarch Zalandra chose their pride over their people's safety. They were about to learn the price of that choice. President Patricia Hayes stood in the very room where Margaret Stone had planned her diplomatic mission a year earlier. But instead of planning for peace, Patricia was about to end a war. Admiral Martinez, she said evenly, begin the final phase. The Admiral nodded and turned to his comms officer. Send the signal to all fleets. Operation Thunderstrike is a go. Across the galaxy, human ghost ships warped toward the three triumvirate homeworlds. These weren't random strikes. This was the final, undeniable demonstration of human dominance. Captain Amy Foster watched her display as Earth's mightiest fleet dropped out of warp over Zephyr Prime, the crown jewel of Vex's empire. It was a stunning world, with swirling blue oceans and silver cities that glittered under the light of two suns. It was also protected by the most formidable weapons known to exist. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "their planetary defense grid is coming online. They've got enough firepower to vaporize this entire fleet." Amy didn't even flinch. "Dr. Carter, are you ready to teach them one last thing?" Back on Earth, Lisa Carter sat at her terminal, tears welling in her eyes. She thought of Margaret, of her friend who died trying to build bridges, not weapons. "Ready, Amy," Lisa replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Initiating master override in 3, 2, 1. On Zephyr Prime, every single defense system simultaneously died. The massive orbital cannons, each capable of cracking a moon, froze in place. The powerful shield generators that wrapped the planet in a protective embrace flickered out. The communication hubs connecting the world to its vast empire went dark. Chancellor Vex stood in his palace, watching in utter helplessness as his civilization's greatest technological achievements shut themselves down. Around him, his advisors scrambled in a panic, desperate to understand how the humans had seized control of everything. "Sir," General Zorak said, his voice trembling, "all our systems are under their command. We can't so much as open a door without their approval." Vex's blue face had turned a pale, sickly white. "How can this be? We are the galaxy's tech gurus." "Apparently not anymore," a new voice cut in. The Chancellor whirled around to find Captain Ryan Bell standing calmly in his throne room. Behind Bell, a dozen human soldiers in sleek black armor held their weapons at the ready. They had materialized like phantoms in the most fortified building on the planet. "How did you get in here?" Vex sputtered. "We walked," Bell answered simply. "Your security systems report to us now." The exact same scene was happening on the other triumvirate planets. Admiral Krell found human commandos in his war bunker. Matriarch Zelandra learned that her own personal bodyguards were actually human sleeper agents who had been shadowing her for months. The three most powerful beings in the galaxy were now captives in their own palaces. Then, President Hayes appeared on every screen across all three empires. Flanked by the flags of 1,000 worlds that had since joined the Human Alliance, she began her address. "Citizens of the galaxy," she started. "1 year ago, your leaders assassinated President Margaret Stone during a peace conference. They mocked our offers of friendship. They readied their fleets to invade our world and enslave our people." She paused, her gaze piercing the camera. "Today, those leaders will answer for their crimes, not under alien law, but under human justice." The trials were broadcast live for every planet in the galaxy to see. Billions watched as Chancellor Vex, Admiral Krell, and Matriarch Zelandra were brought before a human tribunal. The evidence was irrefutable. Video footage clearly showed Vex firing the shot that killed Margaret. Intercepted communications laid out the months of cold-blooded planning that led to the assassination. Private messages between the three leaders dripped with their contempt for humanity. "We were protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species," Vex argued in his own defense. "By murdering an unarmed woman who came to you in peace," the human prosecutor shot back. "By plotting to conquer a world that had never once threatened you." The trial took 3 days. The verdict was unanimous. All three leaders were found guilty of murder, conspiracy, and crimes against peace. Their sentences were carried out without delay. With their leaders gone, the triumvirate civilizations surrendered completely. Their armies laid down their arms. Their governments pleaded for mercy from the very species they had tried to eradicate. But President Hayes was magnanimous in her victory. She had no desire for revenge against the ordinary people who had done nothing wrong. Instead, she gave them something their former rulers never could, a chance to be part of a genuine, peaceful, galactic community. "We will not rule you," she announced to the former triumvirate worlds. "We will not enslave you. We will give you what we offered your leaders 1 year ago: partnership, friendship, and mutual respect." Many worlds accepted her offer right away. Others took time to get used to the new reality, but every single one of them understood the new rule of the galaxy. The era of tyrants and conquerors was finished. The age of human leadership had arrived. Dr. Lisa Carter was named the head of the new Galactic Science Council. Her very first act was to share advanced human medical technology with species the old regime had left to suffer. Diseases that had plagued millions for centuries were wiped out in a matter of months. Captain Foster became the first commander of the Galactic Peacekeeping Fleet, her ghost ships now patrolling the space lanes as invisible protectors of justice, ensuring no world would ever again suffer unprovoked attack. Captain Bell created the Diplomatic Protection Service, making sure that all future peace talks would be just that, peaceful. The murder of a diplomat was now the single most serious crime in galactic law. Admiral Martinez was promoted to Supreme Commander of the Allied forces, but his mission was no longer to wage war. It was to prevent it by making sure any potential aggressor fully understood the price of their actions. 1 year after the trials, President Hayes went back to Kepler Station for a much different ceremony. Delegates from 300 worlds came together to dedicate the Margaret Stone Memorial on the very spot where she had lost her life. The memorial was simple: a statue of Margaret, her hands outstretched in a gesture of friendship, surrounded by the figures of children from dozens of different species. And at its base, her final words were engraved, "Tell them we tried." She wanted to build peace with words, President Hayes declared at the dedication. When words failed, we were forced to build peace with strength. The galaxy is a safer place because of her sacrifice, and our vigilance will keep it that way. As the ceremony drew to a close, the camera zoomed out, revealing a massive human fleet encircling the station. These ships were no longer hiding in the shadows. They hung in the void like both a promise and a chilling warning. The final shot showed a new alien delegation arriving at Earth, asking for humanity's protection from their aggressive neighbors. They didn't come as equals seeking an alliance, but as supplicants pleading for help from a superior power. The receptionist who met them was polite, but his tone was unyielding. "Earth will take your request under advisement. You should know, we take the protection of peaceful species very, very seriously. Any who threaten the innocent will answer for it." The era of human vulnerability was a closed chapter in history. The age of human supremacy had dawned. And across the stars, Margaret Stone's dream of a lasting peace lived on, shielded by the might of the species that had cherished her most. The aliens had wanted to see what humans were truly made of. Now they knew, and they would never, ever forget. Out in the black, the asteroid field stretched out in every direction, a boundless graveyard of mountain-sized rocks adrift in the cold silence of space. Some were laced with rare metals that could fuel a starship for a generation. Others contained crystals that bent the laws of physics, making faster-than-light travel a reality. They called it the Kepler Drift, and for 3 brutal years it had been a canvas for blood and fire. General Thakmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Fang, his gaze fixed on enemy vessels zipping between the asteroids like venomous insects. His sharp yellow eyes followed their every move as his clawed hands clenched the cold metal railing. The Kreks had been battling the Tane for so long, he could practically read their minds, anticipating every attack pattern. Yet, they just kept coming. The Kreks were a species forged in war. Their homeworld's crushing gravity gave them bones as dense as granite. Volcanoes constantly choked the air with toxic fumes that would be lethal to most other life forms. Only the most resilient Creks survived to see adulthood, and those who did became warriors without peer in the galaxy. Thakmor's scales were a roadmap of scars from 100 different battles, each mark a testament to surviving against impossible odds. His people had learned a simple, harsh lesson. Only the ruthless lived long enough to pass on their genes. Mercy was a fatal flaw. Compromise was a death sentence. "Enemy bioships closing in from Sector 7, his tactical officer announced. The younger Krex's voice was rock-steady, untouched by the looming threat. Fear was an emotion their species had bred out of existence long ago. Through the main view screen, Thakmor watched the Thane vessels glide closer, looking like nightmarish fusions of bone and metal. Unlike the Krex ships, which were hammered from pure steel and layered with armor, the Thane vessels were grown, not built. They were living starships, capable of healing their own wounds and adapting their defenses to counter different types of weapons. The Thane had evolved on a planet where blistering radiation storms could peel the flesh from your bones in minutes, and colossal desert winds could bury entire cities under mountains of sand. Their ancestors had survived by becoming a hive mind, sharing thoughts and reflexes at a speed no single being could ever match. They fought as one colossal organism with thousands of moving parts. Swarm Queen Zixth directed her fleet from the very heart of her bioship, the Endless Hunger. Her consciousness was a river flowing through every single vessel in her armada. She could peer through 1,000 sets of eyes and process information with 1,000 minds at once. To her, the Kreks were just mindless brutes, fighting as disconnected individuals instead of a unified whole. Her ship throbbed with organic power as it weaved through the asteroids. Its hull rippled like living flesh, subtly changing its shape to deflect enemy fire. Smaller bioships darted around her flagship, acting like antibodies swarming to protect a vital organ. The war had ignited over the mining rights to the Kepler drift. Both species desperately needed the rare materials scattered throughout the asteroid field. Neither was willing to share a single rock. Neither was capable of backing down. Their savage homeworlds had taught them that resources were not negotiated. They were won through absolute strength. "Launch the Hunter Pods!" Zixth commanded across the neural network that linked her to every Thane in the fleet. Her order was not spoken. It was felt, an instantaneous impulse that reached all ships simultaneously. In a matter of seconds, thousands of small attack craft burst from the bioships like deadly seeds scattered from a ruptured pod. The Kreks answered instantly. Their ships unleashed hell, firing plasma cannons that could turn solid rock into molten slag. The void between the asteroids erupted in a blinding storm of weapons fire. Explosions blossomed like lethal flowers as ships on both sides sustained heavy damage. Thakmor watched in cold silence as one of his destroyers took a direct hit from a Thane acid missile. The corrosive weapon dissolved the ship's hull like it was made of parchment. Atmosphere, debris, and the bodies of his warriors vented violently into space. A fire of pure rage burned in his chest, but his face remained a mask of stone. Emotion, after all, was just another kind of weakness. The battle dragged on for hours. Ships dodged and weaved between the colossal asteroids, using the massive rocks as temporary shields. When smaller asteroids drifted into their path, the warships simply obliterated them with their weapons, thickening the debris field with every passing minute. Neither fleet could seize a decisive advantage. The Krek ships were tougher and more heavily armored, but the Thine vessels were faster and coordinated their assaults with flawless precision. For every Krek ship that was torn apart, 2 Thane bioships were annihilated, but for every Thane casualty, The Kreks lost seasoned warriors who were nearly impossible to replace. The two fleets had been fighting for so long that they knew each other's playbooks by heart. Every clever new strategy was immediately countered. Every surprise ambush was perfectly anticipated. The war had devolved into a brutal slugging match, a contest of sheer endurance where victory would simply go to the side that could bleed the longest. On far-off worlds, billions of civilians anxiously awaited news from the front lines. Krek's mothers sent their sons to die among the asteroids, knowing that retreat meant the complete collapse of their empire. Thane drones toiled without rest to grow new bioships, understanding that defeat meant the extinction of their entire hive mind. The Galactic Council had made a feeble attempt to mediate the conflict. Diplomats from peaceful species had offered to broker a truce. Both the Kreks and the Thane had ignored them with contempt. To species who had clawed their way to dominance on death worlds, the soft-spoken creatures from garden planets could never grasp what was truly at stake. Other galactic powers watched the war with rising alarm. The Kreks and the Thane were two of the most formidable military forces in known space. If their conflict spilled out beyond the Kepler drift, entire sectors of the galaxy could be laid to waste. But no one had the power to step in and force them to stop. And so, the battle continued, just as it had for 3 long years. Ships ripped each other apart in the silent darkness between the asteroids. Warriors died, convinced their sacrifice would finally bring victory. Commanders drafted battle plans, knowing full well that tomorrow would only bring more of the same relentless violence. Neither General Thakmor nor Swarm Queen Zixth could possibly imagine that their endless war was about to be changed forever. Neither could have predicted that a lone ship from a species they had barely even registered was about to arrive and shatter their entire reality. They fought on, locked in their deadly familiar dance, while somewhere in the vast, silent emptiness of space, the USS Dakota was already on a course that would alter the future of the galaxy. The largest battle of the entire 3-year war was about to erupt. More than 200 ships from both fleets were maneuvering into position among the asteroids. General Thakmor had just committed his entire reserve force to this single, decisive engagement. Swarm Queen Zixth had grown a new wave of bioships specifically for this moment. Both commanders were certain that this day would determine the fate of the Kepler drift once and for all. The Iron Fangs surged forward, leading the Kreks battle line. Massive dreadnoughts trailed behind the flagship, their hulls bristling with plasma cannons and missile launchers. The fleet moved in perfect, brutal formation, each ship a floating fortress of iron and fury. On the far side of the asteroid field, the endless hunger pulsed with a menacing organic energy. The Thane bioships swarmed around it like a living bone-white cloud, their hulls rippling as they readied for combat. Acid missiles gestated in their launch tubes like monstrous eggs waiting to hatch. Both fleets were just seconds from unleashing their opening salvos when the impossible happened. Space itself appeared to rip open between them. A brilliant, blinding flash of light flooded the darkness, and in an instant, a new ship materialized where only empty space had been a moment before. The vessel was a complete enigma to both alien species. It was clearly artificial, like a Krek ship, but it was far smaller and more elegant than their blocky war machines. And unlike the Thane bioships, it showed no hint of organic growth. Its hull was a simple, dull gray, decorated with markings that neither side could identify. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Dakota, trying to process the scene his ship had just dropped into. One second they were cruising through hyperspace, heading home after a long survey mission. The next, they were floating in the middle of the largest gathering of hostile warships he had ever laid eyes on. "What in the hell is going on out there?" Morrison demanded of his tactical officer. Commander Lisa Grant was already frantically running scans of the surrounding vessels. Her console spit out readings that made her shake her head in sheer disbelief. "Captain, I'm reading over 200 combat vessels," she reported, her voice tight. "2 separate fleets in full battle formation. Sir, I think they were about to open fire on each other right when we arrived." Captain Morrison stared at the main view screen, his heart pounding in his chest. His ship was trapped, completely surrounded by colossal alien vessels. Some were like flying metal mountains, bristling with weapons. Others looked like monstrous insects crafted from bone and sinew. Every last one of them screamed warship. "Are they locking onto us?" Morrison asked, his voice tight. "No, sir," his first officer Grant replied. "Both fleets have stopped their attack runs. I think we just gate-crashed their party and they don't know what to do with us." Over at communications, Pete Williams swiveled in his chair. "Captain, I'm getting hailed by both sides. They're trying to figure out who we are, but our ship design and language are totally foreign to them." From her station, Chief Engineer Amy Torres chimed in. "The fusion drives are running hot, Captain. If you need us to make a run for it, I can give you everything she's got," she reported. Morrison weighed his choices. By human standards, the Dakota was a beast of a heavy cruiser, but next to these alien behemoths, it was a rowboat in a hurricane. His crew of 180 souls were the best of the best, but they'd never been in a mess this deep. The human ship had materialized right in the no-man's land between the 2 enemy fleets, hitting the pause button on their impending battle. Neither the Krex nor the Thane wanted to make the first move with an unknown variable in the mix. On his own bridge, General Thackmore squinted at the bizarre ship on his screen. He'd been fighting the Thane's living bioships for 3 long years, but he'd never seen anything like this. The design was completely alien, and his sensors couldn't even identify the species that built it. "Your orders, General?" his tactical officer prompted. Thackmore was silent for a tense moment. The Krex were born for battle, but they weren't stupid. Picking a fight with a mysterious third party while already facing the Thane was a recipe for disaster. The Swarm Queen, Zix Thera, was just as baffled. Her massive hive mind sorted through countless possibilities at once, but none of her drones recognized this strange ship. It was too tiny to be a real threat, yet its sudden arrival was deeply unsettling. Back on the Dakota, Science Officer Carl Bennett was running every scan he could think of. "Captain, I'm picking up some wild readings," he said. "Those 2 fleets are absolutely gearing up for a fight to the finish. The energy signatures I'm seeing suggest their main guns could turn us into space dust with a single shot." Morrison walked to the center of the bridge, the crew's eyes all fixed on him. He wasn't just thinking about how to save his ship. He was thinking about the unimaginable destruction he was about to witness. "Williams, can you get me a line to both of those ships?" Morrison asked. "I can try, sir. Their communication tech is worlds apart, but I think I can rig up a basic translator." "Get it done." "Grant, what's our tactical situation look like?" Morrison asked. "Not pretty, Captain. We're outnumbered about 200 to 1. Our weapons wouldn't even dent their hulls," Grant said grimly. "But for now, they seem to be holding their breath, waiting to see what we'll do." That's when Morrison made a decision that would echo through the galaxy forever. He wasn't going to run from these terrifying alien armadas. He was going to stay and try to stop the war. "Williams, open a channel to both fleet commanders," Morrison ordered. "Tell them this. We want to talk." "Sir, with all due respect, that might not be the best idea," Grant whispered. "I know," Morrison replied. "They might see it as an act of war, or they might be just curious enough to listen. Those ships were built to fight, but that doesn't mean their commanders enjoy pointless destruction." And so, the Dakota floated silently in the void, a tiny speck between 2 of the most powerful fleets in the quadrant. Humanity's technology was hopelessly outmatched, But Captain Morrison was about to show them that sometimes guts and a good idea are more powerful than the biggest guns. The alien commanders both received the strange request from the little ship. Neither had ever heard of a human before, but the ship's bold position felt more like an invitation than a threat. And just like that, for the first time in 3 years, the guns in the Kepler drift fell silent. Captain Morrison stood tall on his bridge, staring down two of the most feared military leaders in the galaxy. The main view screen split to show General Thakmor on one side and Swarm Queen Zixthera on the other. Neither of them looked happy about having their war put on hold. The Krex general was the stuff of nightmares. His reptilian face was a roadmap of battle scars, and his yellow eyes blazed with a barely contained fury. When he spoke, you could see rows of razor-sharp teeth. He looked like a predator, pure and simple. The Thane Queen was a different kind of terrifying. Her insect-like body was beyond anything a human could imagine. Dozens of eyes scanned Morrison as her jaws clicked and whirred with what sounded like annoyance. Her voice, when it came through the translator, sounded like scraping metal. "Unknown vessel," Thakmor growled. "You have entered a combat zone. Identify your species and state your purpose, or be annihilated." Zixthera's message arrived a split second later. "Tiny ship, you interrupt the Hive's holy crusade. Explain yourself, or our bioweapons will dissolve you." Morrison had been in tight spots before, but this was a whole new level. He was talking to two beings who could erase him from existence with a thought, but the fact that they were talking, not shooting, gave him a sliver of hope. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel USS Dakota," he said, his voice steady and calm. "We got here by mistake on our way home from a deep space science mission. We never meant to get in the middle of your conflict." The two alien leaders seemed genuinely taken aback by his straightforward answer. Most species would have turned tail and fled the second they saw the odds. This human captain didn't even flinch. "Human," Thakmor echoed, tasting the new word. "The Krex Empire has no record of your species. Your ship is small, your weapons are primitive. Why aren't you running for your lives?" Morrison took a deep breath. What he was about to say was either the most brilliant idea he'd ever had, or the last. "Because I think both of your great civilizations are about to make a catastrophic mistake." The atmosphere on both alien bridges instantly turned ice cold. Zixthera's mandibles began clicking furiously, a clear sign she was agitated. Thakmor's talons screeched as they scraped across the railing of his command deck. "You dare to judge the Krex?" Thakmor snarled. "We have conquered a dozen worlds. Our honor is forged in the fires of battle. Our warriors have no equal." "The hive mind is eternal," Zixthera added, her voice a chilling hiss. "Our unity has crushed countless foes. A single primitive species cannot possibly understand our power." Morrison gave a respectful nod. "I'm not questioning your strength or your honor. It's clear that both of your people have overcome incredible odds to survive, and that's exactly why this war is such a tragic waste." He signaled to his science officer, Carl Bennett, who stepped up with a data pad. "For the last 2 years, we've been charting the far edge of the galaxy," Morrison said, "and what we found out there should worry every intelligent being in this quadrant." Bennett brought up a holographic map showing the deep, dark space beyond the known star charts. Strange pulses of energy flickered in the blackness. "These energy patterns are off the charts, Captain," Bennett explained. "Whatever's making them is bigger than anything we've ever seen. The power levels are so high, they make this entire war look like kids fighting over a toy." The two alien commanders stared at the data, their initial anger replaced by a flicker of intense interest. Survival had taught their species to never ignore a potential new threat. "This data could be a fabrication," Thakmor grumbled. though his voice had lost its edge. "The hive requires tangible proof," Zixthera insisted. Morrison leaned toward the view screen. "I'm willing to give you all of our sensor logs for you to analyze yourselves, but first, I have a proposal. One that might sound crazy." He paused, letting the tension build, knowing his next words could either save everyone or doom them all. "I propose a three-way negotiation. Not about surrender, not about victory, but a conversation between equals about the real danger that's coming for all of us." The silence that followed was so complete you could hear a pin drop. Both alien leaders just stared at Morrison like he'd grown a second head. In their entire history, wars only ended in one of two ways: total victory or total annihilation. "You use the word equals, human," Thakmore finally scoffed. "My smallest gun could vaporize your ship. How can you possibly claim to be our equal?" Morrison allowed himself a small, confident smile, an expression that seemed to mystify both aliens. "Because humans come from a death world, too," he said softly. "We just learned a few different lessons about how to survive." He nodded to Commander Grant, who brought up a new image on the main screen. From the cockpit, Earth was a postcard from paradise, a swirl of blue oceans and soft white clouds. But the data told a story of brutal, relentless violence. "Our planet has weather that can wipe a city off the map in minutes," Morrison explained, his voice calm over the comms. "It has quakes that can tear continents apart, and volcanoes that can choke out the sun. For millennia, we grew up dodging pack hunters and disasters that strike with zero warning." The screen flashed with images of devastation: hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, and volcanic blasts, storms so massive they made the alien homeworlds look like gardens. "But instead of evolving into pure warriors or a single hive mind," Morrison continued, "we learned how to work together as individuals. We discovered that our greatest strength wasn't in being the same, but in being different." All of Zixthara's eyes blinked, focusing on the human captain with a strange new curiosity. "Your species survived that kind of chaos by cooperating, not by conquering?" "Cooperation and adaptation," Morrison affirmed. "We learned to make our differences our advantage, and that's what I'm offering you now." General Thakmore studied the human, a flicker of respect in his reptilian eyes. Any creature that could thrive on such a savage world was worth listening to, no matter how bizarre their methods. "What exactly is your proposal, human captain?" the Crex general rumbled. Morrison met the gazes of both alien commanders without flinching. "Meet me on neutral ground, just small teams. Let's talk about this unknown threat and figure out if three completely different ways of survival might be stronger than just one." "The hive does not negotiate with singular minds," Zixthara hissed, though some of the venom had left her voice. "And the Crex do not show weakness by making deals," Thakmore added gruffly. Morrison gave a slight nod. "I'm not asking for weakness, and I'm not asking for a deal. I'm asking for smart strategy. If there's something out there powerful enough to be a threat to all of us, shouldn't we at least understand it before we tear each other to pieces?" A heavy silence filled the bridge. The war that had consumed them for decades suddenly felt small, dwarfed by the possibility of a greater danger lurking just beyond the galaxy's edge. Finally, Thakmore spoke. "The Crex will consider your offer, human. But be warned, if this is a trick, your end will be slow and agonizing." "The hive is curious," Zixthara added. "Curious about your species and your data. We will agree to a temporary halt in hostilities while we evaluate the situation." A wave of relief washed over Morrison, quickly followed by a jolt of adrenaline. He had just talked two of the deadliest species in the galaxy into putting their war on pause. Now, for the impossible part, proving that working together was better than wiping each other out. Habitat Station Echo hung in the silent void between the two colossal alien fleets. The little human-made outpost was designed for diplomacy, and Morrison had picked it as the perfect neutral stage for their unprecedented meeting. The station's main conference room was a marvel of engineering, specially retrofitted for the three very different species. The environmental systems hummed, maintaining three distinct atmospheric zones for each group. The Krex needed scorching heat and crushing gravity. The Zixth required low humidity and a specific kind of ambient radiation. Humans, meanwhile, could handle just about anything, a fact that impressed the aliens more than they cared to show. General Thakmore was the first to arrive, flanked by two of his most formidable warriors. The Krex were clad in full battle armor, even here. They'd left their weapons behind, but with their natural claws and raw power, they were still walking arsenals. Swarm Queen Zixthara simply materialized inside the station via a biotransport pod, three of her drones instantly appearing at her side, their multifaceted eyes sweeping the room for any potential threats. The Zixth delegation moved in perfect, unnerving sync, like puppets controlled by a single consciousness. Captain Morrison walked into the room with Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Murphy and Dr. Kate Sullivan. Murphy, the head of the Dakota's Marine contingent, was his tactical rock. Sullivan was their top xenobiologist, an expert in all things alien. The three groups took their places at a triangular table, each delegation sizing up the others with barely concealed suspicion. You could practically feel the tension in the air. "Before we get into the unknown threats," Morrison started, breaking the silence, "I think it's important we understand one another. Our species have never collaborated before. Trust will be the key if this is going to work." Thakmore's piercing yellow eyes locked onto the captain. "The Krex don't trust easily, human. Trust is earned in the fires of combat and proven by victory." "The Hive demands unity of purpose," Zixthara buzzed. "Separate minds can never truly cooperate. They must surrender their individual thoughts to the whole." Dr. Sullivan leaned in. "If I may, could you tell us about your home worlds? I think knowing where we come from could help us understand our different approaches to conflict." Thakmore sat up straighter, his pride obvious. "Krex Prime is a planet of fire and rock. The gravity is 3 times what your kind can endure. Volcanoes constantly spew poison into the air. Only the strongest among us even make it to adulthood. The weak are culled by the planet itself before they can pass on their flaws." One of his guards projected holograms of their world, jagged black mountains clawing at an ash-choked ski, rivers of lava carving paths across the land, and cities built like bunkers to survive the endless quakes. "On Krex Prime, every single day is a fight for your life," Thakmore declared. "We learned that absolute strength is the only thing that decides who lives and who dies. Cooperation is a weakness that gets you killed." Zixthara's mandibles clicked. The Zixth evolved on Nexus 7, a world bathed in radiation so intense it would sterilize most planets. Massive solar storms regularly tear away the atmosphere. The desert winds carry sand sharp enough to peel flesh from bone. Her drones showed images of their home, endless dunes under a blistering sun, with bizarre crystal formations rising from the sand like alien cathedrals. Vast underground cities housed billions of Zixth, all living in perfect harmony. "Individual survival on Nexus 7 was impossible," the Queen explained. "Only by uniting our minds could our ancestors endure. The Hive became a single consciousness in countless bodies. Individual thought simply died out because it was inefficient." Both aliens then turned to Morrison, their expressions a mix of challenge and expectation. They had revealed their brutal origins, and now wanted to see what kind of hellhole could have possibly created humans. Morrison nodded to Dr. Sullivan, who brought up a hologram of Earth. From space, it looked deceptively calm, a serene globe of blue, green, and swirling white. Earth may look peaceful from a distance, Sullivan began, but it is, in fact, one of the most chaotically violent planets ever discovered. Our world has more types of extreme weather than any other known habitable planet. The hologram shifted, showing a massive hurricane capable of leveling a city, then a tornado carving a scar across a continent. It showed earthquakes splitting the earth wide open and volcanoes spewing enough ash to trigger an ice age. Earth has cycles of global freezing that last for thousands of years, she continued. It's been hit by asteroids that cause mass extinctions and floods that literally reshape continents. Our ancestors didn't just survive one kind of disaster. They survived dozens of different kinds over and over. Thacmore leaned forward, his interest piqued. How could your species endure such turmoil without becoming pure warriors? Morrison took over. Because we learned that you can't solve every problem the same way. You can't punch a hurricane into submission, and you can't outlast an ice age with a hive mind. The images changed again, showing ancient humans working together to build flood barriers, different cultures thriving in deserts, on frozen tundras, and in dense jungles. Humans survived by becoming the ultimate adapters, Morrison said. We learned to cooperate as individuals, but we kept our ability to think for ourselves. We made our differences our greatest strength instead of trying to erase them. At that, Lieutenant Colonel Murphy stood up and walked to the center of the room. The aliens watched him, their guards tensing. Murphy was clearly a warrior, but he moved with a calm confidence. "May I show you something?" he asked. He then moved through a series of combat forms, a blur of motion showcasing human speed and tactical thinking. His style was fluid, unpredictable, a blend of a dozen different martial arts. He demonstrated how a human fighter could shift tactics on a dime, reacting instantly to a changing battlefield. The alien warriors were stunned into silence. Murphy's fighting style was like nothing they'd ever seen. "Interesting," Thacmore grunted finally. "Your warrior blends strength with adaptability. That is rare for a species from a death world." Zixthara's eyes followed Murphy's every move. His tactics are in constant flux. There is no pattern for the hive to analyze and counter. It is highly inefficient and yet strangely effective. Dr. Sullivan smiled. That's the whole point. Humans learn that being the most efficient isn't always the best way to win. Sometimes you need a backup plan, redundancy, and the freedom to completely change course when you need to. Sullivan didn't just tell them, she showed them. Holograms bloomed in the air, filled with images of human civilization. It wasn't a picture of perfect unity, but of glorious, chaotic collaboration. She showed them cities where a dozen different architectural styles clashed and blended into something new and breathtaking, technologies that fused wildly different scientific ideas. "We figured out a long time ago that our greatest strength wasn't being the biggest or the most organized," Sullivan explained, her voice steady. "It was our ability to adapt, to be flexible. We learned to cook up solutions that no one else would ever dream of." Captain Morrison rose, his gaze locking with each of the alien commanders. "And that's what I'm offering you right now. We're all staring down an unknown enemy, one that might be too much for any single one of us to handle. But what if three completely different ways of thinking work together? We might just find an answer that none of us could find alone." General Thacmore was silent for a long time, the gears turning behind his warrior's eyes. He was reevaluating everything he thought he knew about humans. These small, fragile-looking beings from that quiet blue-green world had faced down challenges that would have broken a Krek's legion. The Swarm Queen, Zixathra, felt a buzz of frantic calculations ripple through her hive mind. By Thane standards, the human way of life was messy and inefficient, and yet, against all logic, It had carried them to the stars. "Your species is far more dangerous than we realized," Thakmor rumbled at last. "Not because of your weapons, but because of the way you think." Ziksathra added, her voice a chorus of many. "The hive mind finds human adaptability unsettling, and yet potentially useful. It seems there are paths to survival we have not yet considered." Morrison gave a firm nod. "Good. Then you're ready to see what we found at the edge of the galaxy, and why we're going to need all three of our approaches if we want to survive what's coming." The real meeting, he thought, was about to begin. The room went dead quiet as Science Officer Carl Bennett brought the deep space sensor data online. A massive holographic display flickered to life, showing the lonely, star-dusted outer rim of the galaxy. But as the image focused, it was clear that the vast darkness between galaxies wasn't empty at all. Enormous energy signatures pulsed in the void, patterns of power unlike anything in any known database. Whatever was making them operated on a scale that made entire star systems look like toys. General Thakmor leaned forward, his eyes narrowed with a warrior's intuition. "These are not natural," he growled. "The energy patterns, they suggest artificial constructs, something built structures larger than our home worlds." The Swarm Queen's hive mind was a whirlwind of analysis, running thousands of simulations at once. The power needed for signatures like these would drain entire stars dry. This technology is far beyond anything in the galaxy right now. Captain Morrison's expression was grim. "Our best guess is that these things have been dormant for millions of years. But our latest intel says they're starting to wake up." "Something is stirring out there," Bennett said, his voice tight. He highlighted a few key readings on the display. "The energy output has jumped by 40% in the last 6 months alone. If that rate continues, whatever that is will be fully online in less than 2 years." The weight of that statement settled over the room. All three of them, the warrior, the hive queen, and the human captain, knew they were looking at a threat that could wipe every civilization in the galaxy off the map. "What do your records show about this region of space?" Morrison asked, looking at both aliens. Thakmor accessed his tactical archives. "Krex explorers charted those coordinates 3 centuries ago. They reported nothing but empty space and turned back. We never sent another mission." Ziksathra added, "The hive mind dispatched probe ships to the galactic rim 200 years in the past. We lost all contact. The vessels simply vanished. We concluded they were lost to natural phenomena." Dr. Sullivan spoke up, her voice cutting through the silence. "What if they weren't destroyed? What if they were absorbed by whatever is out there?" A chill ran through the room. An intelligence that could snatch entire fleets without a single distress call was a monster beyond their darkest nightmares. Morrison stepped into the center of the display. "This is why I called you here. Alone, our civilizations will be extinguished when this thing fully awakens, but together, we might just have a fighting chance." Thakmor's scarred face was a mask of skepticism. "The Krex Empire has over 300 warships at its command. Our cannons can shatter planets. What could your 12 human ships possibly add to that kind of firepower?" Morrison met the challenge with a faint smile. "Commander Grant, why don't you show them?" Commander Lisa Grant keyed up a new hologram. It showed battle simulations, but the formations were unlike anything they'd ever seen, blending the strengths of all 3 species. "Krex dreadnoughts have unrivaled armor and heavy weapons," Grant explained. "Thane bioships offer perfect coordination and incredible adaptability, and human cruisers bring technological flexibility and strategic thinking that's completely unpredictable." The simulation played out theoretical battles. Krek ships punched through enemy lines like a fist of iron, their massive cannons blasting the way open. Thane bioships then swarmed the flanks, their hive mind allowing them to move as one perfectly synchronized organism. And weaving between them were the human ships, constantly changing their roles, providing cover fire one moment, launching surprise attacks the next. Your individual strengths don't just add up, they multiply, Grant said. Krek's durability protects the Thane swarm, Thane coordination amplifies Krek's firepower, and human adaptability makes the whole strategy impossible to predict. Zixathra's mandibles clicked together, a sign of intense interest. The hive mind sees the logic in this. These combined tactics could produce results no single species could ever achieve. But Thakmore still wasn't sold. Simulations are one thing. Real combat is where truth is found. Lieutenant Colonel Murphy stepped forward. Then let's find out. General, we propose joint training exercises. The idea was audacious, almost unthinkable. 3 militaries that had been trying to annihilate each other for years were now supposed to train side by side. Thakmore considered it. Every warrior instinct screamed at him to refuse, but his strategic mind saw the undeniable advantage. And what guarantee do we have, the Krek's general demanded, that you humans will honor this alliance? Morrison looked him straight in the eye. The same guarantee you have on any battlefield. Trust that is earned through shared danger and proven by results. Chief Engineer Amy Torres, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Captain, if I could, I'd like to show our guests a little something about human engineering. She brought up a schematic of the Dakota's fusion drive. It looked nothing like what the aliens used. Krek ships are built for raw power and to last forever, Torres explained. Thane bioships are grown for peak efficiency, but human ships are designed for one thing above all else: flexibility. She demonstrated how the same drive could be completely reconfigured in a matter of hours. The engines that guided them here could be tweaked for combat, for rescue missions, or for long-haul deep space journeys. We don't build the biggest weapons or the fastest ships, Torres said proudly. We build systems that can become whatever we need them to be, right when we need them. That, more than anything, seemed to land with the aliens. The ability to adapt your technology on the fly was a power neither of them had truly mastered. Just then, alarms blared through the station. Bennett spun around to his console, his face turning sheet white. Captain, I'm reading massive energy spikes from the galactic rim. Their power output just jumped by 300%. The hologram shifted, the new data painting a terrifying picture. The ancient structures weren't waking up slowly anymore. Something immense and alien was throwing off the covers after eons of sleep. Morrison looked at the two commanders. Well, gentlemen, I don't think we have 2 years anymore. I think they know we're here. This was it. The moment of truth. 3 species, bitter enemies just hours ago, now faced a common enemy that could erase them all. General Thakmore rose to his full towering height, his doubts finally burned away by the looming threat. The Krek's empire accepts this alliance. Our warships will fight beside yours. Zixathra's multifaceted eyes shimmered in the frantic light of the displays. The hive mind acknowledges the wisdom in this. Our bioships will integrate their tactics with your fleets. A wave of relief washed over Morrison, quickly followed by a cold surge of determination. Then let's get to work. It's time to show this galaxy what happens when 3 of its toughest civilizations team up. Within hours, the largest joint fleet the galaxy had ever seen was assembling in the Kepler Drift. Krek's dreadnoughts, Thane bioships, and human cruisers formed up side by side. Soldiers who were enemies at sunrise were now allies, planning for a war to save everyone. On the bridge of the Dakota, Captain Morrison watched as the alien fleets fell into formation around his much smaller command ship. Lieutenant Commander Tony Rodriguez laid in their course, a direct line to the mysterious threat. "All fleets are green and ready, Captain," Communications Officer Pete Williams reported. Morrison nodded, his gaze fixed on the starfield ahead. Something ancient and terrible was waking up in that darkness. But for the first time, humanity and its new allies were ready to face it together. "All right," Morrison said, his voice ringing with purpose. "Let's go show the galaxy what a few Deathworlders can do when we stop fighting each other and start fighting for each other." The Alliance fleet vanished in a flash of light, 3 civilizations rocketing toward a shared destiny among the stars.